Что такое ВК? ВК — это место, где мы встречаем новых друзей, а родные и близкие встречают с улыбкой наш звонок. Здесь можно встретить рассвет за просмотром видео, а твой челлендж в клипах встретит миллионы просмотров. Своего любимого музыканта ты тоже встретишь здесь. А если повезет, и любимого человека. Будем вместе. Место встречи — ВК. Что такое ВК? ВК — это место, где мы встречаем новых друзей, а родные и близкие встречают с улыбкой наш звонок. Здесь можно встретить рассвет за просмотром видео, а твой челлендж в клипах встретит миллионы просмотров. Своего любимого музыканта ты тоже встретишь здесь. А если повезет, и любимого человека. Будем вместе. Место встречи — ВК. Что такое ВК? ВК — это место, где мы встречаем новых друзей, а родные и близкие встречают с улыбкой наш звонок. Здесь можно встретить рассвет за просмотром видео, а твой челлендж в клипах встретит миллионы просмотров. Своего любимого музыканта ты тоже встретишь здесь. А если повезет, и любимого человека. Будем вместе. Место встречи – ВК. Что такое ВК? ВК – это место, где мы встречаем новых друзей. А родные и близкие встречают с улыбкой наш звонок. Здесь можно встретить рассвет за просмотром видео. А твой челлендж в клипах встретит миллионы просмотров. Своего любимого музыканта ты тоже встретишь здесь. А если повезет, и любимого человека. Будем вместе. Место встречи – ВК.
Матти – хрустящие кранчи-мюсли из цельного зерна. Наполнены вкусом и пользой. Еще больше фруктов, ягод, шоколада и орехов в улучшенном рецепте мюсли Матти. Запеченные мюсли – вкусное решение для быстрого завтрака. Матти. Мы полезное делаем вкусным.
Что такое ВК? ВК — это место, где мы встречаем новых друзей, а родные и близкие встречают с улыбкой наш звонок. Здесь можно встретить рассвет за просмотром видео, а твой челлендж в клипах встретит миллионы просмотров. Своего любимого музыканта ты тоже встретишь здесь. А если повезет, и любимого человека. Будем вместе. Место встречи — ВК.
Матти – хрустящие кранчи-мюсли из цельного зерна. Наполнены вкусом и пользой. Еще больше фруктов, ягод, шоколада и орехов в улучшенном рецепте мюсли Матти. Запеченные мюсли – вкусное решение для быстрого завтрака. Матти. Мы полезное делаем вкусным.
Раз. Уважаемые гости, в этой секции предусмотрен иностранный...
Dear guests, we will have the foreign speakers. If you need interpretation, you can pick up the headsets next to the entrance. Thank you.
Всем добрый день. Мы готовы.
Good afternoon. We are ready to start our session, and I would like to invite our speakers. So would you please come over here and just some comments. So you saw the handouts there, and you have this in advertisement materials on your armchairs. So if you want to learn more about some technical competences, so pick up these leaflets and get the information. So I am inviting Mr. Patyukhin, Chief Analyst for the Financial Technologies Rossельхозbank, Konyev Pavel, Head of the Department of the Innovation Projects of Delivery Company. So Rafael Gayer, Head of the Agrochemical Services Tagrahim Service Company. General Bilur, the Senior Teacher of Skolkov Institute for Technologies, Kirill Vorobyov, and Evgeny Norvan, Head of the Innovation Projects of Air Telecom. Can I ask organizers just one more chair, please? We need one more chair. And today we're going to talk about the challenges for the global agriculture, and our speakers will tell us about digital solutions, trends, what's going on in what happens in agriculture and what helps to develop it. So today I would like to talk about Middle East, and I represent Leonid Company, and then we have been already 2 years working in this area, and I would like to tell why this region can be interested for all of you, for the companies which work in digitalizing of agriculture. So, and I would like to ask some of you, give me the clicker. So, if we talk about regions of the Middle East, so these are the countries which have very, very well-developed economy with rich oil resources, but they are in a dry area with a very, very difficult climate conditions. So that is why historically the agriculture is not really well developed. So that is why they do have food problems sometimes. So the all countries of this area strive to develop agriculture. And today we're going to talk about the key countries. We'll talk about the Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And if we talk about the problems and challenges of this area, so it's a very dry climate and very, very bad soil, and it tells us that agriculture, especially arable lands, so they don't have a lot of them, and of course it complicates agribusiness existence, and they don't have enough water resources, which basically prevents them from many types of agricultural work. And of course it's connected with the food safety, and 85% of food necessary for these people who live there, they have to import. And of course they have a lot of immigrants, and the population is growing very rapidly. Also, a lot of waste, which they have to do something, which definitely doesn't benefit the healthy environment. So that is why agriculture is developing very slowly, with a lot of problems, and they have a lot of obstacles to overcome. If we talk about the key countries which I've singled out, Saudi Arabia and Emirates, so these are the two countries which probably have more arable lands, and basically they grow dates. As well, they have wheat, but it's a very, very expensive type of agribusiness. So they try to grow vegetables on the vertical farms. They have some special farms for the seafood, but most of the food they do have to import, which again creates additional problems for these countries. In 2015, United Nations put forward an initiative for sustainable development, which gave additional impulse to these countries, and they made them think about the strategy, what to do in the future, in the conditions which they are living in. In 2016, Saudi Arabia put forward their strategy for 2023, and in 2018, it was done by the Emirates. So the purpose of the strategy is the import replacement and becoming more independent and to provide themselves with the necessary food resources, the food safety. It's not just to create possibility to grow their own food and produce their own food and provide their people, but also to control quality of food. So not just quality of food, but quantity of food, but quality of food. And so the concept, it's like a wholesome concept, which covers all issues connected with the food production. Nevertheless, these countries moved in different ways. The Emirates accepted their strategy later, but they, from the beginning, they were more active. And their main initiative is called AgTech. And they tell what technologies they use. They use special sensors, which they use drones, and also robotics, special chemicals, and they use fish breeding. And they breed fish and grow fish in controlled environment, which help them to produce as much fish and sea products as they need. They also pay a lot of money for grants and for the support of the agricultural businesses. They give free land for agriculture. They give money for innovative technologies and digitalizations, and they create accelerators which help to create startups in agribusiness. They support startups in agribusiness and other projects. In Saudi Arabia, they started a little later, although the strategy appeared earlier. For them, for Saudis, they admired results of their neighbors, and so they use, again, a lot of technologies in order to monitor what's going on in our agriculture and hydroponics and vertical farms. It's very developed, but not as well as in Emirates. They have different grants, and they have different government help, different R&D and government researchers. They create special closed ecosystems. Well, it's like a test drive which proved projects which show that you can be independent even in these conditions. So if we talk about how to get in this market and what you need for this, I would advise, first of all, to get into analysis of the proposal, because the companies which strive to get into Middle East, we have a lot of companies like that, and in agriculture as well. And when we analyze your product and you understand the project, you understand your target audience and how it correlates with their purposes and strategies, it will help you to find the business behavior. It's important to learn the culture, because these are different people. They live different, have different lifestyle, they have different communication traditions, and these people are kind of low-key people. They're not, and they live in different conditions again. And I told you already that there is the tendency of import replacement, including the food which they use in their country. So they prefer companies to work with the companies which based locally. So either you have to open local office or find partners who can promote your food. If you choose between two countries, Emirates became open earlier for the world. They have very friendly business environment there, and they have free economic zones, they have tax privileges, tax incentives, they have a lot of business accelerators and different other. So they have very, very well-developed market. So a lot of companies work in Dubai and some other Emirates. If we talk about Saudis, so they are very much interested, but they're more conservative, they're more careful. Nevertheless, strategically, they have huge potential anyway because they can work with different products. So that's basically it. And if you have any questions, so would you please ask? Let me give floor to the next speaker. So would you please follow timing so that we can follow the schedule, the agenda.
Так. Следующий спикер Пантюхин Владислав.
15 minutes, please. My name is Vladislav Pantuhin, and I'm a head analyst for the Center of the Development of Financial Technologies of Rossельbansk, and I analyze the trends in agricultural innovations. I will not talk about agricultural technologies, and when we talk about trends, people understand them differently, what is marketplaces, biotechnologies, and so on. And in our bank, in the Rossельbank, when we say trends, we talk about what's going on. We will not talk about vertical farms. We will talk about what facilitates, modifies, and helps vertical farms development. And it's not only our local tendencies, but tendencies which we consider global ones. So that's why we'll talk about them. And we can analyze several trends, technological trends, which are very different, but nevertheless, at a certain point, they do have common things, and they do define the development of the innovative agriculture. And first of all, we have to talk about some changes of what's going on in agriculture, what kind of people work in agriculture, and statistically, the people who work in agriculture, it's about 55, 60 years old, so farmers. Of course, these people are not that much familiar with the innovations, but they are. So we're talking about baby boomers who were born in the middle of the 20th century. Now we have millennials, younger generations who were born in the 80s, 90s, and the generations of the 90s. And we'll be talking about alpha generation. And so this generation really has a different take on what's going on in agriculture. They have different views on agriculture. And as for baby boomers, they basically were interested in their professional interest, in the money making, and in millennials and the Z generation. So it's just a value, the regenerative technologies, then sustainable agriculture, protection of the environment, and spirituality. And these younger generations, they're more risk prone, so they're ready to risk. And as for the startups, the startups always ready to risk. And females, we have more and more females in agriculture, female professionals. And half a year ago, we conducted research in our center, and we saw that about 20% of technological startups are started by females, either as partners or owners. And basically, we're talking about the biotech startups. And feminization is developing full speed ahead very quickly. So we see that the more intellectual, the more creative you are, the more successful you are. It's just all about the ability to implement innovations. And it's whether it's food tech, marketplace, biotechnological, the sensor technologies, or Internet of Things. And well, I've told you already, but let's not forget that We now have different goals and objectives of the sustainable development in United Nations. So whether we want it or not, but agricultural technologies will develop along with the green agenda, climatic changes and everything. And you can single out three main trends. The purposes, the goals of the sustainable development, the regenerative agriculture. So the main principle is not to harm, but to improve. So if in sustainable development, the most was to minimize the damage to the environment, and in regenerative agriculture, most important, you have to not just keep it as it is, but to make it better. Then humane animal breeding. People understand more and more that, for example, milking cattle, it's not only about robots or, robotics in implementation in the farms, but also how well the farm animals feel. I mean, emotionally. And so there are films that, so the animals must behave in a normal, for them, environment, feel good, be fed well. And so regenerative agriculture, sustainable development, and sustainable agenda, it's exactly what will define the trends for the next, 10 years. Well, informatization, yep. And here you can put together several slides. It's 5G and big data and different other technologies. And in Russia, we are not that much advanced in this area. But if these tendencies go into the future, so in the remote agricultural areas, business will become much more successful.
IoT integration in the farms, farm management systems would be possible. This would, of course, become much more accessible thanks to higher levels, machine learning, big data sets, deep learning, everything that would be promoting the AI development. Not talking about agriculture itself, we can be talking about a narrowly specialized intellect, a wonderful, high-quality implementer that the farmer can set challenging tasks to implement, and the robot would be doing those. Of course, going further, we can be talking about more of a general AI. Right now we are talking about generative, but later we would see the generative AI playing a greater role when the farmer is only a coordinator and observer of agricultural activities, whilst the subject, the actor of agriculture process, is done by AI. The same robots, agro-drones, would be interacting not just with the farmer, but with one another. That they would themselves be running a task that they take on for themselves. We can also be talking about 4 more subjects of the agriculture, innovative agriculture, of course. Look, we are talking about startups. Important to know that the Russian Federation, at the moment, we are having over 220 innovative startups that are doing respective agro-tech activities, but we can speak moving forward that we would have 4 more subjects. One is the state, that is developing legislation, various sub-decisions, decrees of the president, etc. A number of a region, actually in dozens of those AI being piloted in agriculture, and all of that is being done with the support of the state at the highest official level. Second aspect would be small-scale farms. These would be defining agent for innovations because their productivity is quite high. About 35 to 40% of the produce around the world is being produced by small farms. And these people that are producing over 1/3 of the total food on the planet are only servicing or only using about 12 to 15% of the arable land, which means that high productivity, if we give them innovations, their productivity, the overall productivity will grow up. Africa is having a great share. Up to 90% of economically active population are farmers or working in the agrarian business somehow. Next slide. Another subject, obviously, universities and agro holdings. We are seeing that agro holdings are not very eager to be working with startups. They want to develop their own solutions. They are implementing their own R&D. So instead of buying an innovative product that would open something forward, buying it from startups, holdings are open up respective research centers. Plus, we can be talking about universities that are also actors of the agricultural environment, and we are seeing the so-called agrarian worker 2.0. If we start with 1.0, such as traditional cattle breeding or growing plants. These are, let's say, the agrarians 55, 60, whatever. Right now, we are seeing, let's say, a new profession, innovation, engineering, IT, data science, data analytics combined, plus traditional, conventional agricultural knowledge. And, well, here, Russian Federation is quite well advanced, be it in the level of NPAs. In agrotechnologies, we are first around the world. Second would be, in the legislative aspect, would be USA. They are having various elements there. And of course, startup as a diploma project, when the university graduates can be presenting their agrotechnological projects as a replacement of their graduation thesis. Another aspect would be collaborations and partnerships that will be playing an important role, be it horizontal on the left or vertical interaction on the right. We are talking about interaction between startups, exchange of experience, knowledge, professional skills. Or vertically, it's when some food holdings are interacting with startups, various sales channels, etc. I won't be even dwelling in details here. If necessary, I'll respond later privately. Africa. I mentioned the content. Just recently, we had a Russia-Africa summit. And Africa is quite a contradictory continent. On one side, there is a problem of famine and international agricultural security issue related to African continent. Great many countries there are seeing serious losses due to famine, not enough food consumption. At the same time, Africa is an active developer of the so-called midstream technologies, the various sites where platforms where farmers, retailers, or some end buyers can come meet, resolve various problems, and organize some communication, interaction, cooperation. In this sense, Africa is actually ahead of everybody else on the planet. Of course, when we talk about the developed part of the world, Europe, United States, Russia can be seen as such, or as European, etc., developing quite a lot, various vertical farms, bioactivity, etc. But talking about the midstreams, the sites where platforms where parties can come, various participants can come and find solutions, there are not that many, and Africa is leading here. And talking about Africa, 60% of the arable agricultural land that can be used as part of the sustainable agenda is in Africa, because economically active population, let me reiterate myself, 60 to 90% of economically active population of many countries of Africa is doing agriculture. Great many startups are running various digital solutions. And another aspect, in 2022, Africa was the only country that attracted more agro-tech investment than any other countries, including Europe and North America. 1.5 minutes to go. Last slide. We can, of course, talk about the trends, the so-called calibration of solutions, precise agriculture, fermentation, and selection. The solutions that will be defining the main tool set that we are using to assure food security in the future. Of course, I would be ready to dwell on each of those 3 dimensions if there are questions. Thank you. We have a minute for questions. Immediately, okay? Sure, here. And Mike? Thank you very much. Quite an informative presentation. 2 questions. First, you said agrarians are having challenges with internet telephony. I was talking about 5G. So the question, then why no mobile operator, at least virtual one? Why are you not offering smaller telecoms to be bringing this internet connectivity to rural areas? Because fixed internet is becoming too expensive to bring into the area. And second, a mark of your website that you have demonstrated when you're offering farmer project, why wouldn't you use that as a value implementation of routers for monitoring of various parameters, not just in the buildings of the agrarians, but also collecting the data from various controllers to oversee situation. The second, you see, it's a kind of question proposal. Am I allowed to play with a clicker? I would like to go back to the slide to illustrate my answer. No? I guess the best way would be for us to interact after a session. Would I need to respond to this proposal? If we look at different solutions in agriculture from Rossельхозbank of ours, so over the course of last 3 years, from 2020, we've come up with a great tool set for innovations in agriculture. And I guess overall, agro-technologies is quite a fresh cluster and segment that became quite interesting after the first deal, the climate cooperation between Monsanto and the startup. But since 2020, we as a bank have done quite a lot, various ecosystem in the digital, etc., where we are supporting startups from all around, offering accelerators, acceleration program analytics. June 22, we invited an agro-investment solution with pitch sessions for startups. Rossельхозbank is supporting other clusters as well. Talking about the proposal you've made, I would be ready to interact face-on-face afterwards. Let me add that Rossельхозbank is implementing what is part of agro-technologies, talking about the network project, about internet coverage. It obviously touches on not only agriculture, great many of other subjects participating in here, and Rossельхозbank by itself wouldn't have enough resources to resolve this challenge. In here, various collaborations would be important. Moderator is trying to intervene, kindly saying, colleagues, we are having an agenda to follow. And the gentleman seems to be continuing about various collaborations. Mayor's office of Moscow was offering grants for farms in the city. So, are you doing anything about implementation of such an initiative in over 1,000 settlements of Russia outside of Moscow? Would you, Madam Moderator, would you allow me time? Yes, briefly. We have recently accumulated various ideas, and about a month or month and a half, we would have another event. I can even can give you an official name. It would be called the Bank of Ideas. We would indeed be looking at the implementation of the most competitive ideas. Possibly, what you have raised is part of that segment. I would only be able to give more detailed feedback after interaction with colleagues, because I'm not the only person working in the bank. I'm now inviting Mr. Pavel Konyev, Доставка морем, or Sea Delivery by Sea holding company. Hello, everybody. My name is Pavel. I'm the head of IT in the Sea Delivery Доставка морем holding. Agriculture is something quite new for me. I've been here for about half a year. Before that, I worked in fintech. Maybe I wanted to share the way agriculture as well as plant growing, specifically plant growing, we are interacting with, and the way this is developing, comparing both in our country internationally. And then maybe a few words about who we are, why are we here, we are exporting agricultural products. We are not that big. We have exported over 1 million tons of agricultural products in the previous season. We are mainly stressing the digital trading as well as financial solutions, instruments that are convenient for our industry. Talking about plant growing, I have key elements characterizing business and the players working there. First is the length of the cycle, phenomenal. The cycle is 12 months. It's a rare story. It affects great many processes. Second aspect here is seasonality. It affects, we are having clear seasonality when we are preparing for seeding period, when we are growing this, and then we are selling the produce. Third element, light green, is dependence on nature. We are trying to lower it, but it's a key factor in growing your produce, and not just growing your produce as exporters, since we are exporting from low sea, such Azov Sea in the south, very low sea, windy, thus you cannot have your ships floating. And the fourth aspect, regulator. Food security important, thus all the countries' regulators are quite active player, both controlling, both supporting, that's actively affecting the development of the industry and technologies. Now, talking about the players, the farmers, the holdings, the companies that are working in the agriculture industry. And the farmer profile, mainly 50-55 and that's standard everywhere around the world, the Russia, States, China, etc. We are all, I guess, expecting maybe some change in generations and the way the portrait would look like, but that's what it is. And second is relatively low concentration of business. Agro holdings are about 35%, and here the plant growing, unlike cattle breeding, it's much less concentrated. That affects the market conditions. So, question. What are the specifics of bringing in innovations in the plant growing? How can we live in this conditions? Let's try to respond to them briefly, and I'm inviting you to take a look at this at the business development cycle, stage 1, 2, 3, preparing to seeding, 2 growing, and 3 sales. Well, there is universal technology that I guess helps us. We can import them into the industry. They are not very different from industry to industry. You are using marketplaces for procurement, for logistics services. You can easily bring in the working technology and just installing this unit into the existing industry. Whilst there are technologies that are very, very specific, for example, everything related to big data, AI, if we are talking about plant growing, these would be challenging to be brought in. Why? Because we are getting the yield once a year. No matter what data we put into system, the outcome, the result will be in 1 year's time. In that sense, data collection is going quite slowly, and thus it's rare that we can fine-tune those models. Talking about the precision agriculture, you can of course break down your field into 1,000 plots, measure parameters in every piece, try to use various fertilizers, technologies, etc. But the results would still be there in about a year's time. And it would not be clear whether it was climatic conditions or the specific parameters that you used on the plot would be available to you only in 12 months, which is obviously slowing down the spread of technologies.
So let's get around this cycle. As for the preparing for the seeding time, so we have some instruments which we work with the demand. For example, you can online analyze the demand on the harvest, and it gives you a chance to buy for better price in more convenient conditions. And so we have agro-leasing company which develops very quickly and which gives you some very flexible financial instruments, can help you with the agricultural equipment and buying chemicals, fertilizers. Yes, and the farmers continue using these instruments, although they mentally are very conservative. As for the points of growth and preparing for the seeding period, so these are basically about offer. So we have to replace what we used to import into Russia. And we're talking not about the digital, virtual technologies. We're talking about physical technologies, material technologies. We need technologies about seeds production. We need material technologies, let me put it this way. And yeah, we have a lot of areas to grow and a lot of interesting directions. And next potential, which I see, it's the development of the financial instruments. Well, this is exactly what we're doing. And for example, those agro companies which we talked about, they don't have any problems with getting additional financial resources. They have good reputation. A lot of people would like to invest into them, give them money, but we don't have a lot of small and medium farmers. It's very difficult to analyze them and difficult to analyze their relations with the banks because they have very unstable financial flow. And it's some kind of a very risky business, small business and in agriculture and medium business agriculture. Well, it's difficult to give them money because they're risky. So we have some additional advanced financial instruments. We take into account a lot of risks connected with the small and medium business. And we test a lot of these instruments right now, financial instruments. As for the growing agricultural products, this is the main stage of the business. And what is good, what I see. We replace imported technologies with the local technologies in main directions. And we know a lot of good technologies in the world, and it's important to understand all these technologies, new technologies, they are being implemented, but only by very, very big ag business companies. And of course, for the big businesses in their scale, I mean, if you just, I don't know, say 1% of from their cost, it gives a lot of profit. And they can do that. But as for the small business in agriculture, it's much more difficult to do that. And so that is why, yes, we do implement technologies, but in very limited scope. And it's not specific only for Russia. So I looked at this, for example, at American business, but it just happened maybe 20 years ago. So first new technologies were accepted by big agricultural companies, and only after that these technologies, small business companies started using these technologies. And we collect information about big projects in agriculture. We understand how they work, and we put together information about what companies grow, what kind of products, and we try to collect information about arable lands in different kind of businesses. And of course, this kind of database gives possibility to create very interesting and useful instruments. So the problems and challenges, as I already told you, we don't have this mass technologies which can be used everywhere. A lot of these new technologies, we don't have enough qualified specialists. Why? Because it was not very popular. You know, people wanted to be lawyers and economists. Nobody wanted to be a farmer. It was not popular. It was not prestigious. Even in our area, in southern part of Russia, sometimes we don't even have the mobile communication coverage. And coming back to the last stage, how to sell what you have grown. So logistics, well, it's easy to digitalize. Logistics, it's quite easy to understand. It's standardized, and it is going very actively. About 20% of deals in agricultural business in terms of selling harvest, they all go through digital trades. And this tendency is growing. Well, now we have another problem in Russia. The fuel, diesel and gas is growing, you know. And okay, coming back to the deals, buying and selling grain, for example, or harvest, a lot of things to improve. We have electronic stock exchange. We have electronic traders, digital traders. And we as exporters, we create digital solutions for big agricultural business. Nevertheless, the share of digitalization is less than 5%. These are just very special, narrow niches. Well, farmers are feeling okay. I mean, there are a lot of middle companies which are ready to go to farmers and buy. So it develops not as fast as we would like to see it. Nevertheless, there are still a lot of very interesting ways how to help farmers and final buyers. Okay, to sum up, so we have classical market technologies. When first we have just a special people, innovators who just interested in doing new things. Then after innovators, we see followers who just see the benefits, and then they go. So the technology becomes more and more and more popular. And what happens in our area, so, and not only in Russia, but all over the world, technologies very often fade away. Why? Because the results are not obvious. You can see the good results in 1 year, 2, 3, and more years. And not all businesses have possibility to try and test these technologies. And agriculture is quite conservative. business. Technologies to prove themselves need 10, 15 years, or sometimes they can be used only in a very narrow segment of agro-business. But there are other ways to implement technologies, and I think it's more effective. And some big corporations use these methods. And in our case, these technologies can be implemented through the regulator. Like, for example, some decision is made obligatory or compulsory for everybody, 100%. Well, yeah, now people become very unhappy. People start resisting. But if you do it once and for everybody, just by the law, mandatory, do it. Well, you can do it very quickly. Well, but people will not be happy. So, and after that, after this forced decision, the system will get accustomed to how to use it, and after some time, they see the advantages of the system, and then the system, step by step, starts working and become popular and proves its efficiency, and survives. This innovation survives. So, again, conclusion. So, technologies, when it comes to agribusiness, are implemented quite slowly. It's a trend what I can see in many countries. Then, actually, our situation is better than we thought. We had research. We have research from McKinsey and Partners, and it was a very, very pessimistic prognosis. But we were compared with United States. But if we compare it with China and India, so Russia, we look much better. So, and of course, it's a long way which we have to go through. And the third, of course, it's angle which we look at this. The most efficient way is, again, to go through the central regulator, through authority, which is very difficult to do, but you can do it once and for everybody 100%, and then it will simply take time to get accustomed to it. Well, thank you very much. Well, questions later, question and answer session will be later. Thank you very much, and let me invite Rafael Gaiver, Tata Agrochem Service Company. I am from Tata Agrochem Service Company. I represent this company today. I will tell you about how technologies and our laboratories help our agribusiness optimize their costs. The company, Tata Agrochem Service, was founded in 1979. Nowadays, this company is not only supplier of the mineral fertilizers, but also we supply seeds. We have our agrochemical center, R&D labs. We have a team of experts, where we have more than 20 agro specialists in this area. I represent laboratory, and I will tell you how we implement different IT technologies, and also I'll tell about agro scouting, as we call it. And so the laboratory itself is involved into 4 main research. It's soil analysis, cattle feed analysis, and testing. And in this presentation, we'll tell you about soil analysis and agrochemicals, what we achieved. So we went away from wet chemistry, and we use spectroscopy now. And this technology is very popular all over the world because it proved that it's a very, very good one. So infrared spectrum, if you look at slide, it's the invisible spectrum. And this technology, just to put it simply, so it's like fingerprint, it's unique. And this technology allows us to compare with the samples, different samples, with the standards. And we can analyze 7 parameters. So pH, organic substances, phosphorus, and 2 other parameters. And so all this analysis of soil is we go through special procedures. So we use NDVI technology, and we use this a lot. It's a very good instrument, NDVI. There are a lot of companies who can supply these kind of scans, and it helps us to understand better where to get samples. And I can show you that if earlier it was we had 80 hectares and divided it in 4, and then we collected the mixed samples. So now we take into account the productivity using different methods valuation. So one of the systems is crop-wise, and this system understands the vegetation period when something starts growing, and it also accumulates the space photos, aerial photos, and it builds model. It generates 2 types of shots. You see this, the third one with the brown spots. So this is the soil map. It collects this kind of integrated image, and we see it's some kind of a digital map of soil. And the fourth one is the NDVI. The last one is a red zone. It's a bad area, and the blue and light blue, so it's a high level of vegetation. So we take into account. So these are the places where we take samples. Some of the samples give possibility to understand the sampling points automatically. These are so-called Thyssen polygons, and every polygon, we know the area of this polygon and geolocation. So then we take samples, analyze these samples, and we identify the final results. So, but what I would like to focus, our laboratory identifies organic substances. And this organic substance and this data on NDVI on vegetation is so they correlate very well. And if you come back to the slide, we see this lighter area, so the vegetation was worse. And so low content of organic substances in the yellow zone, well, that's a low concentration of organic substances. Based on this, so this is exactly the point when we can talk about the optimization of cost. So at the real time, we cannot understand how much organics we have in the soil. And so that is why we cannot use fertilizers because we don't have enough information. Here is the so far as we don't have, if some area doesn't have enough nutrients, so we just compensate it with the fertilizers. And so this is the special map for the differentiated introduction of the fertilizers. And if you compare it with the classic approach or traditional approach, we can see on this example, well, you can understand these advantages on this table. Well, you see the difference is not very big, but it's just only one indicator, and we have also difference in other indicators, and so the total result and is much better. So it is a real experiment which we had it in a real field. So agro businesses use it, they implement these methods on this. You see, this is the whole table of these calculations. This is the all agrochemical analysis for every piece of land, where we calculate what kind of fertilizers we have to use. And using these differentiated methods, just only on this example, you can save 120,000 rubles. So we decrease cost on fertilizers. We developed optimum way to introduction fertilizers, so we increase harvest and yield. And so these are more realistic statistics. And on this field, we got an increase in sugar beets about 80 tons. So if you just make simple calculation, so we basically saved about 200,000 rubles on sugar beets without any extra investments into mineral fertilizers. So this is how it works. So this is basically what I want to tell you. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Well, thank you very much. And I'm inviting our colleague, so his presentation will be in English.
Thank you. I'm very sorry I do not speak good Russian, so you'll have to bear with my English. And I also apologize for maybe some of the images may not be of good quality. We had a last-minute technical issue and had to change some things. Okay. So I work at Skoltech in Moscow at the Center for Agro-Technologies. And we'll be talking about something that we call envirotyping today. Right. This is something that's not very interesting. It's the growth of population over the years, the global population, we all know that. But what's more interesting for me is the number of people or the percentage of people in extreme poverty is also decreasing year on year or decade by decade, right? Not just the percentage, but also the absolute numbers. So what does that have to do with agriculture? People with more money that they can spend want better food, more variety of food. So if earlier I could afford only one meal a day, I would eat anything. But now I want fruits in my diet, I want more meat, I want milk, right? So the amount of production has to increase to meet all these demands. And that is what the FAO has been saying for some years now, that by 2050, we would have to increase production by 70%, right? And this was said in 2018, it's already been 5 years. So how much have we been able to do this over the past? Are we on track to meet this 70% increase? The global agro output growth over the decades, starting from the 1960s, if you sum them up, it is about 14%. Or if you want to add year-on-year increase, it's about a little over 15%, right? Not much of a difference. So over 6 decades, we grew only by 15%. But now we need to increase by 70%. Is that possible? And this is global, right? What about Russia? Decade by decade, there's been a little growth. In the 90s, we had a big drop in production, right? And we are still trying to catch up. So on average, we have about a little over 5% of growth. The EU, our neighbors, they also have roughly the same growth, but due to different reasons, right? But what about some other countries? India, more than 17.5%. China, even better, 24%. These are the ones that are pulling up the averages, right? Or even if you take a country like Canada, which is, let's say, very similar to Russia in terms of the environment or climate and all that, even that is beating the global average, right? So there is space to grow in the Russian agro industry. So what are the factors that are contributing to this growth? So there are 4 main factors. The first is, of course, increasing the land over which we are practicing agriculture. There's only so much we can do. And especially with lower population and less number of people wanting to get into agriculture, the area that you can manage is reducing, right? The other is expansion of irrigation. Again, Water availability of water is a key factor. The third is input intensification. So basically, you put in more seeds per hectare, more fertilizer per hectare. That works until a certain point, and then it goes the opposite way because you're putting in too much, right? And the fourth factor is what is called total factor productivity. It's how better your inputs are. It could be better seeds, it could be better fertilizers, better management practices, use of digital methods to analyze, whatever, all this technology-based inputs, right? And the last few decades, we see that this total factor productivity or the technology-based productivity is what is leading the improvement in production growth. So this is the global numbers. But if you look at Russia, okay, so the numbers within the yellow are for the total factor productivity, the contribution. And in Russia, again, it's a much smaller component. So much so that if you take the average over the last 6 decades, the global average is 6.3%, while the contribution of total factor productivity in Russia's agricultural growth is just 3.6%. So what does this tell me? It tells me that there is a lot of scope for technology to improve agriculture, and there is a lot of scope for the agro-industry to adapt and adopt a lot of these practices. So one of those is what we call envirotyping. So what's envirotyping? Let's say we have this area of land, there are some forests, there are some animal operations, there is some grassland, there are farms, whatever, right? So whenever we digitalize, what do? We take this piece of land, we convert it into grid blocks, easier for the computers, right? So each of these grid blocks would have its own value for different parameters, let's say soil moisture, or how much rainfall it receives, or what is the temperature, things that are very dynamic. They change very quickly with time. Or they could be more static ones, like the soil type, which doesn't change very quickly, the topography or the type of land use, or it could be anything in between, right? You could come up with a number of different parameters. This whole set of parameters is what we call an environment. And if you take a particular combination of the dynamics of each of the components of this environment, that is what we call an envirotype, right? Envirotyping as a term is fairly new. It was coined sometime in 2016. And it has about 6 or 5 major groupings, right, of the factors. One is the soils. It includes the soil physical characteristics, the chemical characteristics, the biological characteristics of the soil. Similarly, you have the crop management practices, also use of the climate information from remote sensing and all that, and also the crop itself. Okay. So where does envirotyping fit in the modern plant breeding cycle? The traditional cycle has been that if you want to test the same or a variety in different environments, you had to go plant them in different environments for a couple of cycles. You had to wait, you see how it behaves, all that, right? But the modern breeding technology is using both genotyping, how the genes behave, and envirotyping to be able to predict how the same variety or the same genotype would behave in an untested environment, or how an untested genotype would behave in a tested environment, right? And of course, the holy grail is to be able to predict an untested genotype in an untested environment. And then we use the breeding value from both the genetics and the environment to select the best possible seeds. So one thing that this directly, envirotyping directly helps is in identifying phenotypic plasticity, which is basically the changes in the phenotype as responses to the environmental stresses. You have, could be from drought, could be from insects, all of these, right? And envirotyping helps to improve this resilience to the environmental uncertainty. And also, if you're looking at the agroclimatic zones, we have, let's say, this is how the climatic zones are currently across Russia, right? We have a few zones, mainly this is the biggest type. But in the future, it's changing. With climate change, there's going to be a very different distribution of the climatic zones. And crops that you were growing here may no longer be able to survive in that same place without adapting to either the environment or breeding for the new environmental conditions. So as an example, recently we had some investors who wanted to bring hops or to grow hops, the main flower component in beer, the one that gives it the smell and taste, in Russia. Most, or about 90 to 95% of the hops in the world is grown in the Pacific Northwest of the US, and a little bit is grown in Germany. Okay, so they asked us, they had a few locations that they were interested in buying and then starting this hops business, growing them there. And they asked us to evaluate if these locations would be suitable. And it turns out almost none of them were. Because when you take into account the combination of the humidity, the soil, the temperature, the water quality, everything, it's just not compatible. There was just one location that we found that was sort of close to the conditions of the one sites in Germany, right? But otherwise, it's not. So basically, they are now looking at different areas, right? So it's a good thing to do this before putting all your money in there and then finding out that you're going to lose all your money because it's not a productive place. So another thing that we are seeing lately in Russia is drought, which is not something that was traditionally ever associated with Russia. Russia has always had good water resources, and it still does. But in some parts, especially the south, we are seeing drought almost every year now, right? And that is impacting the yield of the crops. And it's not just the plants, we are also looking at animal products, right? Like milk. And drought is not reducing, it's increasing. If you look at the climate risks for the next, until 2050, you see that the proportion of time that you have drought within a year and also the frequency, how frequently you have drought, are both increasing. Okay? The numbers here are basically best case scenario, worst case scenario in red, and the middle is the most probable scenario of the temperature rise, global warming. Okay? So you're seeing more droughts, more heat waves, and something that's interesting is you're going to see more runoff and less runoff, depending on which area you're in. Right? So the north will see more runoff because you see more melt of the permafrost, and in the south, it's too hot and you're going to lose water. So how can you put in these factors into your analysis? So we did a study recently, so where we take, as other speakers have also spoke, some factors like the crop health or the NDVI. But NDVI is essentially an after-the-fact indicator. By the time you see the red in the NDVI values, the plant has already been damaged, right? You can't do anything for that. But there are other indicators like the water availability index, okay, which tells you how much water the plant is holding. So less water means, okay, something is happening with the plant. You can sort of predict what's going to happen. In a few days, you're going to see the NDVI start to go brown or red. And you put together these along with the type of crop you're using, and you can find out if for that particular crop in that particular location, is it experiencing drought? Some other crop might not be, but this particular one might be. Okay? So you can use that information, predict that or forecast that into the future, and use crop modeling and AI to be able to predict or forecast the yield for this season or even to the next season, given the conditions. Right? And this was something that we did for sugar beet for a company in Krasnodar, and we were able to beat the current method of prediction of yield at the beginning of the season by about 20%. It was more accurate by about 20%. Right? So envirotyping is being considered in global agro operations. Like in China, they're using this for better water use efficiency, right? Especially for improving soil conditions and in drought-hit areas. And they were able to increase the yield of rice by 12% and maize or corn by 9%. These are just some examples that I'm putting out. In Uruguay, they have now started to come up with soil management plans, decision support systems, and climate support for the farms, or climate smart farms.
John, sorry, only 1 minute left.
Sure.
Okay.
In Colombia, again, for the animals, they're utilizing envirotyping to improve. Similarly, in Uzbekistan, moving away from monoculture to more climate-adapted planting. And in fact, the World Bank, in 2020, more than half of the funding went to climate-smart agriculture. It had to have a component of climate-smart agriculture in there. Right? And a whole bunch of countries are now concentrating on envirotyping. And it's not just like new countries, but it's also, as we have already seen, companies or even the marketing analysts, they are now waking up to the fact that unless you include the environment into your analytics, it's not going to be accurate anymore. And also envirotyping is what you need to sort of able to predict what effects the climate will have on the plant in the future, right? So hopefully envirotyping will be able to unlock the relationship much better between the genetics and the environment, and help in identifying more climate resilient crop or animal varieties, while also accelerating the development of superior cultures by speed breeding, genomic selection, this kind of techniques in conjunction with envirotyping to optimize resource efficiency. So that is it for my talk. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your speech. И приглашаем Воробьева.
Next, we are inviting Vorobyev Kirill from ООО «Первая беда». Good afternoon. My name is Vorobyev Kirill, First Bit Company. As part of this presentation, we would like to present our work of the market research work of the agriculture sector to identify the true level of automation of agro-industrial complex companies, not to be looking at the data that can be generated by whatever statistics, whatever. but which is not convincing to us. But we wanted to run our own survey and study and get the result that we can share. The plan of my presentation would be the study of level digitalization in the agro-industrial complex, the pyramid of digitalization in the place of agro-industrial complex therein. Examples, 2 cases, enterprise company digitalization as well as mid-segment. And I would give you more details in further slides. We have studied some 60 companies serving predominantly top management, chief accountants, financial directors, owners, general directors. We have names, specific contacts, etc. We feel the study was successful, a geography of our survey. We were not that active about behind Urals. Geography, you see mainly Central Federal District, Volga, Urals, a little bit of Siberia. You can see on slide the companies we surveyed. Those surveyed: poultry, cattle meat processing plants, milk, oil, plant oil factories, plant breeding, etc. Then you see the breakdown of type of the companies, sizes of the companies by the head counts. About 9% of enterprises under 100. And you see about 35% of enterprises from 500 to 1,000. First question we asked: the amount of investment you plan for software automation, program automation for 2024. We were having, you see, yes, we are planning automation of the company for 2024. We are having funds earmarked, in some cases serious amounts, in some cases less. Another important question was, in line with the current trend, who in your company is responsible for IT on the right? Turned out that in 27% they don't have a separate IT structure, so that was very much matching with those saying no investment into IT and automation in 2024. In majority of cases, IT is responsibility of a IT director or the head of IT department, and we expect that they are responsible for the infrastructure they are using therein as well. And only in 14% of the companies they are having a digitalization director responsible for innovation. So, and if you compare that with other sectors, retail, oil and gas, etc., they are having a director for digitalization there, whilst agro-industry is just catching up here.
Следующий вопрос был, нам хотелось узнать.
Next question is, so what companies plan for 2024? The most of the companies, speaking of percentage, so we ask them to choose several options, not necessarily one, so we will not give 100%. So first of all, it's so how many companies plan to introduce automatic or computer programs in their management? So accounting, salary calculations, personnel management, as you see, and the companies begin their computerization from most vital things, then technical service and repairs, and it's very important for the agricultural business. Then financial instruments, 43%, and we plan that these two directions, technical service and financial instruments, will go up, and accounting and tax will. So the purchasing, logistics. So the company usually automate this. So it's probably the last point, 38%. So we don't plan to do anything, and we're happy with what we have, 23%. And what we plan is that well, companies basically didn't understand what we want from them when we asked this survey. So we talked with top management. We decided to add the question, what do you expect from digitalization? And so it decrease manual labor. I mean, that's most of the top people expect higher revenues, increase of profit. Some specialists were pessimistic. They say, well, nothing will change. It's basically we talked about smaller companies who really wanted to digitalize, but they were not as optimistic. It's fortunately nobody said the situation will get worse if we digitalize. So the opinions split in what factors prevents you from digitalization of the company. So a low level of knowledge of top people about the advantages of the digitalization, and of course we asked this question. A lot of managers think that they don't know about IT technologies which can help them, how digitalizations can help them, don't even look in this direction. So these are the companies, even without IT departments. So they have chief accountant, that's it, she's busy, or he is busy, and they simply don't care, don't know that you can digitalize your logistics, optimize. Well, I don't care, I can do it with my good old software, I don't care. So it was extremely popular answer from the companies. Then IT technologies, well, it's not our priority, we're an ag business. And well, it depends on the corporate mentality. Some companies say, well, next year we will open new facilities, so IT can wait. Or we will invest into hardware, in infrastructure, in agriculture, so it's not priority. People don't believe in success if they use IT, but you have to, we try to explain to them that if you ignore IT, you will come to the point, then you will lag behind, you will lose competitive advantage. And well, some people say that the government doesn't support agricultural business. Well, we do have government support in different projects, and probably next stage. So some words about this pyramid, how we see it. This is our levels of digitalization, how we see it. Usually companies begin these digitalizations from bottom up, from infrastructure, some small things on internet by servers. The next stage, cyber security, operational system, antivirus. Then it's ERP class, then accounting, budgeting, tax calculations, and so on. So business processes, a CRM system, programs for waste calculations. So it's quite simple. Then integration. So some companies use integration as it is. Some have master systems, special computer instruments, and then a database processing. So it's a modeling system and so on. And so here we just gave some examples. Probably some of you know the vendors. So these are the vendors who can just meet your expectations and provide you what you need. So this is an example. Agroter, it's a real company. It's agro holding. They've been on the market from 2008. It's top 15 agro-technical companies. So 250,000 hectares. It's all not far from western part of Russia. So these are all the regions: Tula region, Kursk region, and so on. This company has digitalized all these levels of the pyramid. The whole spectrum of the digital areas is digitalized already. They have everything. So they have safety system, cyber security system. So I1S accounting system. All business processes are digitalized. The CRM, BPM, master system, service bus, and farm management analytics. So they have everything in database and service and big data analysis as well. And again, as an example, I will not give you the name of the company, but we do have a lot of such companies. It's a regional poultry company, and we have pork farm, big pork farm as well. So as for the infrastructure, everything is fine, but we do have information about them and where they can develop. We recommended them to buy better service and better internet connection. So them secure software, this company hired a security company, but after that all their servers were hacked, and just explained to them that their cyber security system doesn't work at all. So business processes, well, nothing really special. So they organize it. They don't have special IT department. It's just a regular processes. So they have master system. They have database processing, so nothing really new, just a regular software. Well, the company is growing, it's increasing turnover, more money, and I simply wanted to say that we do have options so that I mean, this company is pretty efficient, nothing new in terms of digitalization, but they have very, very promising ways to develop. So I think it was a lot's live. Have any questions? So you can ask questions. We will be here. We can go to our exhibition display. Well, thank you very much. And the last speaker, Evgeny Norov, Artelecom. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. So thank you very much for being here. I hope that my presentation will just perk you up, so you will get out of here less tired and in a better mood probably. And so I hope that my presentation will motivate you for positive mood. And again, I would like to tell you about solutions which probably not exactly about agriculture, so it's more about practical experience, because we based our work on what we can do and what we can show to industries. So we started developing different solutions, and now our solutions, first of all, for agriculture built on networks. So we are mobile provider, mobile communication provider, and mobile internet provider. And we ask the question, what if you don't have mobile communication in the field, on the farm? So we create our own network. It is called Laravan. It has very big coverage, and it can help places where mobile operators will never go there because there's nobody to serve. And our network is cheaper than the mobile, than the cellular phone, and it helps to communicate without these technologies. We're the biggest provider of this kind of technology. We have our sister companies which develop it. And in the Internet of Things, we are one of the top actors in this area. If we talk about classical solutions, we have a level of the final equipment, so any sensors, meteorological sensors, stations, and there is a network level, so we work with it. Where you see Artelecom, this is our business and then you go to the application server. So these are applications which many of you develop. These are the systems which you use. So these are different solutions based on ADNS, in which we use this data. We have to collect this data or offer our solution. So this is one of our services which we develop very these are the special tags or collars which helps to locate the position of the animals, of the cattle, and how they move. So these tags are developed by our sister company, which use them already several thousands of them. And of course, we use them in the animals in the fields, because very often the animals run away, and it's easy to find them using these tags. And I know that our colleagues from Bryanskaya, Kaluzhskaya, they have it's a big problem, because the animals of one of the biggest agro holding sometimes run away, and so they get into highways, And so the next story is which we develop, and we are testing this technology. And farmers have several problems, and one of these problems is to grow the grain, then to store the grain, and the third problem, headache, is how to sell it. And so we propose several solutions, stage by stage, how to solve these three main stages. So one of them is how to save this grain. A lot of storage facilities which are not digitalized, and we came across the problem that the companies, after harvesting, so they put their grain in storage, and when it's time to sell it, it's in a bad condition. It's spoiled. Why? Because it was not monitored. We have special thermo bars, as you see it on the picture. This is the standard thing which is used very often, and the storage facilities still use these technologies. And we see that if you just put your hand on the grain, if it's warm, it's bad. If it's not warm, it's good. So it's very simple. But this is thermo bar, and it is telescopic. It measures humidity inside of the grain bulk, and it sends it in the internet channel. So this data goes into information system. It is deciphered, this data, and you get on-time information, real-time information, what's going on in the pile of grain. And based on this, we understand what to do with this. Now we have a project together with some research labs, how long this grain can be stored in this given condition. I think we will finish the project, but we already prepared hardware. We already have all these sensors. We have a system of collecting this data, and a lot of grain facilities, storage facilities using it already. Well, the next solution, this is my personal pride, because this project, I am worked on this project. We create so-called digital service for field meteo sensors or meteo stations. I see some familiar faces here with whom I worked already here in this among us. So we started it in Altai area in 2021. We installed 4 meteo stations, meteorological stations. Now we have more than 100 of them. And maybe in next 2 weeks we will install 50 more stations. So how it looks like? So all this data is connected along the network. So you get the energy from the solar batteries. We get information about the precipitations, wind, humidity. So all this data is used by the farmers for their everyday's work. And we have very good analytical platform with the different models, recommendations, with the weather forecast, with the diseases. And on the level of the regional Ministry of Agriculture, this data is sent so that Ministry of Agriculture can see what's going on in the area, in the industry. They understand the climate conditions. The Altai area is a very, very risky area for agriculture. It's a pretty complicated condition. So you have to understand what recommendations to give to the farmers, whether it's a force majeure already or not yet. So we get all this information in one place in the Ministry of Agriculture, so they make decisions. We involved Agricultural University, and they conduct research about how many meteo stations you need to get precise forecasts. So, and now we're talking about covering the whole area with these meteo stations so that we can get information from every square meter. And we're talking about several thousand meteo stations. Why we're talking about these things? Because in parallel we have research how to interpret data which you get from sensors, how much fertilizers you have to introduce, how many seeds you have to seed on this given area if you don't have enough humidity. So this is the question which we can answer using this system. And I believe that by the end of this year we'll get results. And of course we'll share everything with you. So the project is very interesting. As my colleagues say, it's just a beautiful project. And so that is why we are boasting about it everywhere. So the next story is about a technological video surveillance and video analysis. So you can digitalize whatever you want. And one of the cases is the digitalizations of the weighing technologies when we get the truck with the load. So the checkpoint allows it to get in. So put it on the scales, so we identify the cargo, we collect information about the weight and this data about weight and cargo from the truck sent to the information system, depending on type of cargo which we have. So this truck is sent to certain facility, storage facility, left to right, and or some other terminal for some kind of, I don't know, directions. Video cameras, video analysis is also used, of course, for protection, for storage areas. So, and we have huge experience in this kind of working with the CCTV. Why? Because we are supported with a big business, which helps us a lot to develop this kind of thing. So that's why every case is unique. And I remember I got a picture with the engineer who is fixing the video camera, and there are 8 cows observing how engineer is installing camera. It was very funny picture. So one engineer, 8 cows watching. And so we also build up model, and we use this model how we count animals in the field. So we use drones, and this drone calculate how many animals are on this certain area. So you don't have to go there and physically count these animals. So you can do it through the drones using the bird's eye and drones.
But frankly, as of today, we probably should wait for a little because we are seeing some challenges, social challenges to using drones. Obviously, talking about automation of weights and other analytics. In case of animals, one of our clients was having a challenge. The client was selling animals by weight. Animals are different. If those are small piglets, they might get 40 piglets on the truck. When delivering, 39 left. Where is one? I guess only the driver could have witness to this. They needed to make sure that they shipped 40 got the place. Live weight is so much. Photo confirmation of how many animals are on weights when loading the weight. The data goes to information system. There is a document that is sent to the client of our client together with other standard transportation document set. Obviously, going back to monitoring and control, you see feedstock distribution, identification of various numbers on conveyor belts, containers, etc. That's more for warehouse logistics and terminals. When cameras are looking at specific area and reading them, and trains with containers passing by are identified. not just the number, but also the type of the equipment. See on the site here, we are demonstrating the type of equipment that was helping us to understand what kind of a truck has come. That's a cargo truck, maybe garbage removal, video analytics stories are plentiful to the point that we are capable to understand various whether specialty equipment is being worn by staff when they should or not when or used various cloud-based video analytics and then just the no edge computing is necessary. Next element will be the system of positioning staff at dangerous production. Agro-industry is large enterprise and factories around Russian Federation, having a staff that are working one per team in a dangerous environment in space. They should have gas analyzer on board with them. But there were cases when the staff was, I guess, inhaling gases without the gas analyzer with him or without it working. So we had to organize the solution. The tracker, LoRaWAN trackers are always on. They are tracking whether the person falls down, whether they're not moving. Alarm button, data being broadcast. Operator gets informed that the person goes into the dangerous area or is out. And if there is an alarm sign, the operator knows where the person is and immediately provides help. And data goes on their Telegram channels immediately. And I guess the classical element, something none of you would be surprised with, metering data collection from everywhere around enterprise. Why? Storage facility, you need optimal temperature, humidity. We are collecting the data from those devices. Internet of Things advantages here. We don't need wires to organize the solution. They're autonomous. Installing those LoRaWAN transmitters easily with Scotch tape or some screw, and you are getting in the chronological data, I guess, every 15 minutes or every X number of days as needed. And the key thing is that altogether, this offers our clients sets of solutions that are covering their pain points. You're coming to an end, time-wise. Yes, I'm practically done. May I respond to the question about the networks? Because he was given to others. They exist. The operators, virtual operators, are working on an existing infrastructure. Even someone is creating contract, you cannot come into the field where there is no transmission tower without operator. Based on what I'm hearing through the microphone of the speaker, a gentleman is asking for data universal template of some enterprises that would allow all the network, I guess, of the operators in place. How do you prove that the client should invest in you when you are selling your product and not the other solution? Because obviously there are different levels of info communication. and then going into engineering, saying that whenever there are mobile operators such as MTS or other cell phone operators, frequencies being limited, etc., etc. So a set of challenges to even assure radio transmission quality. Plus, of course, if you have an answer to, yes, I have a question, partial answer to your question, we need to be looking at each region specifically. For example, if you have attended this session in room 4, just before us, Mr. Ivan Petrov stated the following. Some 44, 45 regions have some platform in place. And we are having a representative of a company that are actively automating and digitalizes regions. And based on that specific company, some 21 regions are digitalized. Let's take a look at Altaysky Krai region, Respak information platform. When agro-industry player is coming into that platform, that's a website for the interaction of the regional authorities together with the agro-industry player. Once they are getting in that system, they are getting information on measures of support, etc., meteo stations. And now what you are requesting is not available at the moment in Russia. Some sort of verification for my client to see that to verify the fact that I indeed have brought X amount of fertilizers, etc., etc. Because there might be some compromising of various statistics. Your question is clear. There is no such solution at the moment that shouldn't be discussed as part of this session. We can discuss this outside. Unfortunately, I'm informed from the organizers that we should be rounding up the session. If you have any questions, feel free to interact with speakers privately. Thank you for your attention and for presentations.